The hall was packed, loud with bells, silk, and fake smiles, and I was meant to be invisible. Then the vampire king lifted his bride's hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles, slow and reverent, and the entire royal court watched him like he was the sun. The high priest began the vow in that sacred, dragging voice, and right as he said, "By throne and blood," a burn tore across my wrist like a blade made of ice. I gasped. The tray in my hands tipped. Red wine splashed across white marble like spilled confession. Every head snapped to me. The mark didn't arrive politely. It crawled out from under my skin, black at first, like ink bleeding through paper, then brightened into molten gold, a twisted sigil forming in the span of a heartbeat. Light snapped into the air around my arm and threw broken reflections across the king's face. The official bride, Lady Selene, froze beside him, her smile cracking like thin glass. Someone screamed. Someone laughed like they couldn't help it. Guards shoved forward. Steel rang. The music died mid-note, strangled by the room's sudden hunger. "Seize her," Selene hissed. Too quick, too sharp, like she'd been waiting for a reason to say it. I backed away, shaking, my wrist on fire. I wasn't a noble. I was a maid in plain gray linen, hair pinned tight, fingers raw from scrubbing floors. I had come to serve, not to be seen. But the mark didn't care what I was. It flared brighter, and the chandeliers above us flickered like they feared it. The king, Lucian Nocturne, turned his head slowly. Not rushed, not confused, just locked. His eyes were a cold storm, but when they landed on my wrist, something shifted in his face like a memory waking up angry. The air thickened. The torches bent toward him as if pulled by gravity. The entire room felt suddenly smaller, trapped inside his attention. One guard grabbed my arm. The instant his glove touched the mark, it snapped bright, and the guard flew backward, slamming into a column with a sound that made people flinch. Silence hit the room like a slammed coffin lid. The mark had protected me, or claimed me. Either way, it had chosen a side. Lucian took one step down from the dais, just one, and the whole hall bowed without thinking, bodies folding like wheat in wind. He didn't command it. His presence did. Selene stayed standing, chin high, eyes wet with rage, but her fingers tightened around his sleeve like she was afraid he'd slip away. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. All I could do was stare at my own wrist like it belonged to someone else. The sigil was perfect, ancient lines biting into light, pulsing in time with my heartbeat, as if my blood had always known its shape. The high priest leaned forward, voice trembling. "My king, the throne sign has awakened." Lucian didn't look at the priest. He didn't look at Selene either. He looked at me. His pupils narrowed. His jaw flexed once, controlled. Then he said, quiet but cutting, "Do not touch her again." He didn't raise his voice, but the words landed heavy. "Hands off," he added, colder. "She's mine to question." Selene's head snapped toward him. "Mine," she repeated like the word tasted filthy. "She's a servant, a mistake. This is sabotage." The court murmured. Nobles leaned together, hungry for scandal. I felt their eyes like hooks in my skin. Humiliation burned hotter than the mark. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to run. But the guards had formed a ring, and the king's gaze pinned me harder than chains. Lucian approached, boots silent on the marble. The closer he got, the calmer the mark felt, like a beast settling when its master arrives. But everyone else felt it too. His shadow lengthened, curling at his feet, rising like smoke, and the torches along the walls steadied as if his power had found a leash. Selene stepped in front of him, blocking his path with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your Grace," she said sweetly, "this is your coronation vow. We cannot allow—" Lucian didn't stop. He moved around her without touching her. The dismissal was brutal. Selene's cheeks flushed, and the court saw it. The bride stood beside him, crowned and perfect, but he walked past her like she was air. My knees wanted to buckle. I swallowed hard and forced myself not to shake. My mind raced through every rule I knew. Humans did not draw royal signs. Servants did not interrupt sacred vows. Anyone who stained the coronation floor got whipped. Anyone who threatened the throne got executed. The captain of the guard barked, "Public breach! Bring her to the iron circle. 2 guards surged in. The mark flared again, warning hot, and the marble under my shoes frosted white for a blink. People gasped. Someone whispered, "Witch," and the word spread like rot. Lucian lifted one finger, just a small, bored motion. The guards froze mid-step, faces blank like their strings had been cut. A ripple of fear rolled through the court. Seleni's eyes widened despite herself. "I said stop," Lucian murmured, soft and lethal. "That was mercy." He reached for my wrist. I flinched, expecting pain, expecting cold. His fingers hovered first, as if he was fighting the urge to grab. Then he touched the mark with the pads of his fingertips. The sigil blazed. The hall lights dimmed. The air snapped with static. Lucian's shoulders eased like someone had loosened a tight collar around his throat. The shadows at his feet stopped writhing and settled into a clean, steady outline. His power, everyone could feel it, clicked into place. Selene sucked in a breath, horrified. She stepped forward and forced her hand into Lucian's, gripping him like a claim. "Touch me," she demanded, voice pitched low so only the front row heard. "Prove this isn't real." Lucian looked at their joined hands as if he'd forgotten it was there. He didn't pull away, he simply didn't respond. Selene pressed her palm against his chest, desperate. Nothing happened. No glow, no shift, no calm. If anything, the air grew sharper, like his patience was thinning. A cruel whisper slipped through the nobles, delighted and vicious. "The bride is empty." Selene's eyes flashed. "Liar," she spat at me, even though I hadn't spoken. "What are you? What did you do?" I swallowed my fear. "I don't know," I managed, voice small. "I didn't ask for this." Lucian's gaze snapped to my face, and for a second something raw flickered there, interest, anger, hunger, all held under a lid. "No," he murmured. "You didn't." The high priest stepped down, shaking. "Your Grace, the old law." Lucian cut him off with a glance that made the priest choke on his own words. "The old law will watch," Lucian said, voice calm. "So will I." Selene's composure shattered. "This is an insult," she cried. "In front of my house, my allies, my father's banners." Lucian leaned closer to me, close enough that the court could see the angle of his body, the way he unconsciously blocked me from the ring of guards. His voice dropped just for me. It hit my ear like velvet over a knife. "If you run," he whispered, "I will follow." My stomach turned. That wasn't a promise of safety. It was possession wrapped in restraint. His hand stayed on my wrist, thumb brushing the edge of the mark like he couldn't help it. Heat climbed my arm, and with it came something else. An image, sudden and impossible, a dark room, fevered breath, the weight of him close, and a voice saying my name like he'd known it for years. I blinked hard. The vision vanished, but my skin remembered it. Lucian's fingers tightened, not painful, just firm. He felt my change. He always felt my change. Selene's voice went cold. "You are humiliating me," she said, low and deadly. "Choose, Lucian, your bride or your servant." The entire court leaned in. Silence sharpened. The king's power stirred, shadows in the far corners twitching, hungry for an excuse. I felt it too, like a storm pressing against my ribs. Lucian didn't answer Selene. Not yet. He turned to the captain of the guard. "Bring the execution block," he said. A collective gasp. My blood went to ice. My knees buckled at last. Then he added, without looking away from me, "For anyone who harms her." The room erupted. Selene's face twisted in fury. Nobles shouted. Guards hesitated, caught between orders. And my wrist, my cursed, glowing wrist, pulsed once like a heartbeat not fully mine. Lucian leaned down so only I could hear. "You will stay near me," he said, "or they'll kill you to hurt me." My lips parted, trembling. Why would they? His eyes flashed silver at the edges. "Because you just became my weakness," he said softly, like a confession he hated. "And they live for that." The blade of dawn hovered somewhere in my imagination, humming like a high note in my teeth. "Iron circle," the captain barked again, and 2 guards shoved in. The mark flashed hot. Frost filmed the marble under my shoes for a blink. Someone whispered, "Witch," and the word spread. Lucian lifted one finger. The guards froze mid-step, eyes empty. "I said stop," he repeated, calm enough to terrify. "That was mercy." Even the chandeliers trembled anyway. Selene stepped forward, smile shaking. "Finish the rite," she told the high priest. "If it's false, it dies. If it's true," her gaze cut to my wrist, then to Lucian. "Then she owns him." The court leaned in, hungry for blood with manners. Lucian moved between me and the circle, broad shoulders blocking the light. He didn't touch me, but his shadow curled at my feet like it wanted to bite. "You will not execute her," he said. "The blade answers only to blood," the high priest whispered, raising his staff. Selene's hand slipped under her bridal cloak. Silver flashed. She lunged at me. I jerked back on pure instinct, and her dagger sliced Lucian's side instead. The hall screamed. Lucian didn't bleed red. He bled black smoke, thick and bitter like a storm leaking out of a wound. Selene froze, eyes wide, suddenly realizing she just stabbed the one monster who could wipe the court off the map. Nobles stumbled away. Guards reached for their weapons like they mattered. Lucian looked down at the smoke, then up at Selene. His face went blank. The torches bent toward him. Shadows poured along the floor, climbing pillars like living ink. People tried to run and found their feet stuck, as if the palace itself had decided to hold them for judgment. I didn't think. I grabbed Lucian's sleeve. The instant my fingers touched him, the shadows hesitated. The air unclenched. Lucian's shoulders shook once, like he was forcing himself back into a shape that wouldn't kill everyone here. His eyes snapped to mine, furious, startled, as if my touch had become an order. "Don't," I whispered, "please." Selene stared at my hand on him, jealousy turning sharp enough to cut. "You stopped for her," she breathed. "You stopped." Lucian didn't deny it. He turned to the captain. "Disarm the bride." Selene's mouth opened in outrage. "You can't, my alliance." "Your alliance can wait," Lucian said, voice like ice. "My control cannot." The high priest tried again, desperate. "My king, the right." Lucian's gaze flicked to the blade of dawn. It tilted toward him now like a threat. A hush fell. Even Selene went still. Lucian gave a slow, bitter smile. "So it's a test of me," he murmured. Then he looked at me like the truth tasted cruel. "They'll kill you to make me break." My stomach dropped. The mark pulsed hard, answering him like it agreed. "Bring her," Lucian ordered, louder now, to everyone. "To my chambers. Not the cell, not the circle, my chambers." Outrage exploded. Selene shouted, "She'll take everything." Lucian stepped close to me, mouth near my ear, dangerous and private in public. "Do not flinch," he murmured. "They're watching for fear." "I'm terrified," I breathed. His fingers brushed my wrist and the mark glowed like trapped sunrise. "Good," he said softly. "So am I." The guards formed around us and pushed through the snarling court. Selene's smile returned, thin and venomous as I passed. "You'll beg to die," she hissed, "and he won't be able to save you." We crossed into the inner wing. The corridor lights dimmed. Old locks clicked open by themselves at Lucian's silent command. The air turned colder, older. My mark itched like it wanted to speak. In that sealed dark, the noise of the court became a drumbeat behind stone. Lucian's hand slid from my wrist to my waist, not gentle, just certain, holding me like a shield. I hated how safe it made me feel. "Who was that voice?" I asked. Lucian didn't answer. His eyes tracked the corridor like he expected knives. "Keep breathing," he said. "If you faint, I lose you." "I'm not yours to lose," I snapped. His jaw clenched, but his grip tightened anyway. "Say that again," he murmured, and the air around us prickled. A door at the end of the corridor opened on its own. Inside was a bedroom made of black wood and candlelight, a room that didn't look slept in. It looked weighted in. On the far wall hung a mirror cracked down the center. In the crack, my reflection didn't match me. For a second, I saw another woman's eyes in my face, older, crowned, furious. I stumbled. The mark burned. A memory hit like a punch, fevered heat, Lucian's voice rough with pain, hands gripping the edge of a coffin, and my own voice whispering, "Stay with me, King." I staggered, breathless. Lucian caught me. His gaze dropped to my mouth like he was afraid of what I might say next. "You remember," he whispered. I shook my head, lying. "I don't." He leaned closer, almost touching, breathing my breath like it was a drug. "You will," he said, "and when you do, they'll come for your throat." From outside, the captain's voice cracked through the silence. "My king, Lady Selene has demanded a blood trial at dawn." Lucian's eyes went darker. "Of course she has," he muttered, and the candles flared. I swallowed. "Blood trial means execution." Lucian looked at me and his control trembled again, only around me. "It means they'll make your death a spectacle," he said softly, "and they'll call it justice." The cracked mirror shivered. Somewhere in the walls a latch slid, soft and slow, and every guard outside stopped breathing. Then the palace locks clicked again farther away, like someone had just opened a path for killers. The locks kept clicking, soft as teeth, one after another down the corridor, like someone who knew the palace was walking through doors meant to stay dead. Outside Lucian's chamber, his guards shifted, steel whispering from scabbards. I tried to pull away, but Lucian's hand stayed at my waist, firm, controlled, far too intimate for a man who hadn't even admitted my name in court. "Stay behind me," he said, and it wasn't a request. It was the kind of order a storm gives a tree. I hated that my body listened anyway. My mark flared hot, enough to make my bones ache. Lucian's eyes snapped to it, and candlelight steadied as if my skin was the only thing keeping his power from snapping the room in half. "Dawn," I whispered, thinking of Selene smiling while my throat met a blade. "They'll drag me out." Lucian's mouth tightened. "They'll try." He turned his head toward the door, sharp as a weapon. "Captain," he called, voice calm, but the air went colder. "How many?" The captain answered through the wood like he didn't dare breathe inside this room. "3 moved through the west gallery, my king. No torches, no footsteps. Assassins." Lucian's pupils narrowed, and for a split second the shadows in the corners of the ceiling started crawling, like black water looking for a mouth to pour into. My stomach flipped. He felt it too, that slip in control, that violent edge. "Don't," I said again, softer this time, and my fingers found his sleeve without thinking. The reaction was instant. Lucian's shoulders eased just a fraction, and the shadows stopped rising. He looked at my hand like it was a chain and a promise all at once. "You don't even know what you're doing to me," he murmured, voice low enough to scrape. "I'm just trying not to die," I shot back, but my voice shook because his closeness was wrong and right at the same time. His gaze dropped to my lips, then away, like he was fighting hunger he refused to name. "If you die," he said quietly, "they win." A heavy thud hit the corridor door outside, the one that led to the private stairs. Another thud. Then a soft scrape like metal kissing stone. The captain swore under his breath. "They're cutting the hinge." Lucian moved so fast I barely saw it. 1 second he was in front of me, the next he was by the door, hand flat on the wood as if he could feel the enemy through it. He didn't open it. He listened. And when he spoke, it wasn't to the guards. It was to the dark itself. "Not tonight." The candles guttered. The room's temperature plunged. My breath fogged. Lucian's voice stayed steady, but the power behind it was ugly, ancient, too big for walls. "They came because Selene asked them to," I said, because the thought hit like a nail. "She wanted me dead before Dawn could even pretend to be fair." Lucian didn't deny it. "She didn't ask," he replied. "She paid." He turned halfway, eyes catching mine. "Your death is her dowry." My skin went cold in a new way, anger cutting through fear. "So what am I to you?" I demanded. "A mistake, a curse, a tool." Lucian's jaw flexed. He looked away like the truth tasted like blood. "You're a fuse," he said, "and I'm the bomb." The door exploded inward. Not with fire, with silence, like sound got swallowed first. 3 figures rushed in wearing matte black masks that drank candlelight. The nearest held a sunsteel bolt launcher, short and brutal, its tip glowing pale gold. I saw the symbol etched on it and my mind screamed, execution weapon. Lucian's body reacted before thought. His shadow snapped forward like a living beast, slamming the first assassin into the wall so hard stone cracked. The second dodged, fast, inhumanly fast, and aimed at my chest. Lucian twisted toward me too late for his own safety. He took the shot. The bolt hit his ribs with a sickening punch. Gold light flashed through his side and Lucian's breath broke, an actual gasp, raw, almost human. He staggered but didn't fall. His eyes went black at the edges and the whole room shook like it hated being near him. "Lucian," I shouted, and that sound did something worse than the bolt. The king's power surged at my voice, not at the enemy, not at the weapon, at me like my fear was a trigger. The candles blew out at once. Darkness slammed down. He moved anyway, blind-fast. The third assassin tried to retreat and Lucian caught him mid-step, hand closing around his throat. The mask cracked under Lucian's fingers like eggshell. "Tell her," Lucian growled. "I'm still breathing." Then he twisted, violent, final, and the body dropped. The second assassin ran. Lucian would have chased, but he swayed, hand pressing his own side, black smoke bleeding around the sunsteel lodged between his ribs. My heart hammered. I rushed to him without thinking, and the second my hands touched his chest, the room steadied again, like my skin was a key sliding into a lock. Lucian's eyes snapped down to my hands, then up to my face, furious and shaken. "Don't touch me," he rasped. "You'll burn." "You're burning already," I snapped, and I pressed harder, ignoring the sting that climbed my palms like holding live wire. The sunsteel bolt hummed, bright and hateful. Lucian's breath came in shallow pulls, like he was forcing his lungs to remember how to work. "Only human hands can pull it," the captain shouted from the doorway, staring in horror at the bolt. "My king, don't let her." Lucian grabbed my wrist, not to stop me, to anchor himself to the only thing keeping him from turning this palace into rubble. His grip was iron and desperate. "If you pull it wrong," he whispered into my ear, "it detonates inside me." My stomach dropped. "Then tell me how," I said, voice tight. Lucian's lips brushed my hair, so close it felt like a kiss he refused to take. "Straight out," he breathed, "and don't flinch." Outside, the corridor filled with boots as more guards rushed in, but none of them stepped closer. They watched me like I was holding the king's life in my hands, because I was. The bolt's glow made my mark flare in reply, as if the weapon recognized the same blood sense the throne had used earlier. I wrapped both hands around the bolt's shaft. Heat seared my skin. I bit down on a cry. Lucian's body shook, one sharp tremor, and the shadows tried to rise again, angry at his pain. "Look at me," he ordered, voice breaking through the roar in my head. I met his eyes. They weren't storm gray now. They were something darker, older, a hunger with a crown. "If you panic," he murmured, "I lose you." "Stop saying that," I hissed, and I yanked. The bolt slid free with a wet click and a flash of gold. The room exploded with wind, then stopped, dead still. Lucian exhaled hard and the black smoke in his veins retreated like a tide pulled back by the moon. Blood dark as ink spilled down his side, but the skin began knitting together already. He stayed standing only because my hands were still on him, flat to his chest. His forehead dipped toward mine for a second, not quite a touch, just a tremble of closeness that felt like he was starving and choosing to starve. "That's it," he whispered hoarse. "That's what you do." The captain's eyes flicked from my burned hands to Lucian's healing ribs. "She saved you," he said, stunned. Lucian's gaze never left me. "No," he corrected softly, "she stopped me." The words landed heavy because I felt the truth. If I hadn't grabbed him when the bolt hit, he would have slaughtered everything breathing in this wing, guards included, Selene included. The whole palace turned to ash just to quiet his own pain. My hands shook as I pulled away, but Lucian caught my fingers and held them against his lips, not kissing, just breathing them in like he was memorizing me in case I vanished. "You're shaking," he said. "So are you," I shot back, and it was true. His control was stitched together by a thread, and that thread was me. A knock came from the corridor behind the guards. Not polite, court knock, official, inevitable. The high priest's voice floated through the doorway. "By order of the blood trial, the marked woman must be presented at dawn." Seleni's voice followed, bright as poison. "And for the king's safety, she will be kept in the glass cage until then." My stomach flipped. "Glass cage," I whispered. Lucian's mouth pulled into the smallest smile, the kind predators wear when they decide a room is prey. "They think they're protecting me," he murmured. "They're protecting themselves from me." He released my fingers and turned to the captain. "Double the guard," he ordered, "not on her, on everyone else." The captain hesitated. "My king, the bride." Lucian's eyes went to the cracked mirror, then back to me. "If Selene gets near her," he said quietly, "kill the lights." The captain swallowed. "Yes, my king." Lucian stepped close again, so close my breath caught. He didn't touch my waist this time. He held his hands at his sides like he was afraid of what his own fingers wanted. "Dawn is a theater," he said softly. "They want you frightened and me chained." I swallowed. "Will you be chained?" He tilted his head, watching me like I was the only honest thing left in his world. "I can be," he said, "if you ask." My heart tripped. Why would I ask that? His gaze dropped to my wrist where the mark still glowed faintly. "Because you know what happens when I'm not," he said, and the memory of shadows crawling made my throat close. Up close he smelled like cold rain on stone, like smoke after lightning, like danger pretending to be calm. "Listen," Lucian murmured, "they will try to make you hate me in that cage. They will whisper that I'm using you. They'll show you bodies. They'll show you lies." He leaned in until his lips were a breath from my ear, voice turning intimate and terrifying. "Do not let them put fear in your mouth." My skin prickled. "What do you want from me?" I asked, almost angry at my own shaking voice. His breath hit my ear. "To stay alive," he said, "long enough for me to end this." A servant girl appeared at the doorway, white-faced, holding a folded silk dress like a surrender. "For the cage," she whispered. I stared at it and laughed once, sharp and humorless. "They're dressing me for my execution." Lucian's eyes darkened and the room's corners twitched. Then he stopped it with a slow inhale. He stepped behind me, not touching, just standing close enough that his chest was a warm wall at my back. His voice softened, almost honest. "If you survive dawn," he said, "everything changes." I turned my head, looking up at him. "And if I do?" His gaze held mine, steady, devastating. "Then I burn the kingdom that killed you," he said simply, and for the first time I believed he meant it. The door at the far end of the corridor opened on its own, inviting the path to the glass cage downstairs, the place where the court could watch me like a monster in a jar. As the guards moved to escort me, Selene's laughter echoed faintly from the stairwell, too pleased, too confident. Lucian's hand finally touched my waist again, possessive and controlled at once, and he whispered so only I could hear, "When she looks at you tomorrow, smile back." My throat tightened. "Why?" Lucian's eyes went cold. "Because she thinks she already won," he said, "and I need her arrogant." We walked out into the corridor and every torch along the walls bowed toward him as we passed, but I felt the real threat crawling closer. Selene wasn't just angry. She was planning. And the cage wasn't to hold me. It was to bait him. At the end of the hall, a thin line of dawn light slipped under a window like a blade testing the room, and the mark on my wrist pulsed once, hard, as if warning me the trial wasn't about my life anymore. It was about whether the king would choose control or choose me. The stairs down to the lower court felt longer than my whole life. Glass panels rose in the center of the marble hall like a display case, etched with silver runes that made my teeth buzz. The moment I stepped near it, my mark flared and the runes answered, brightening like they'd been waiting. The high priest stood beside the cage, face hidden under a bone-white hood. The throne spoke, he told the crowd above, but the law still tests. Selene waited at Lucian's right, perfect in white and gold, smiling like a knife. She hooked her arm through his for everyone to see. He didn't look at her. He looked only at me, and the air tightened, as if the palace was holding its breath. Selene leaned closer to me. Voice sweet. "Tell them your name," she murmured, "so they can carve it." I kept my chin up. "I didn't ask for your court." Selene's smile thinned. "And yet it's eating you alive." The high priest raised a silver rod. "Enter." Guards guided me inside. The door shut with a clean click and sound died, swallowed by runes. I could still see Lucian through the glass, still feel him like a storm behind my ribs. Selene pressed her palm to Lucian's forearm, trying to claim him. His power didn't react. It stayed flat. When my mark pulsed, the torches steadied at once and Lucian's shoulders eased like he'd been drowning and just found air. Selene saw it. Her eyes flashed, and for a heartbeat her glamour slipped, raw jealousy showing through. "Place your palm on the center rune," the priest ordered. I did. Cold burned into my skin, then warmth, then a pull, like the cage was tasting my blood through bone. A vision hit so hard my knees buckled. Lucian in a dark chapel, ash on his hands, whispering into an empty crown. Selene in a corridor passing a small vial to the palace physician, smiling like a funeral. Then Lucian's voice in a coffin against my ear, "You're finally awake." I gasped and staggered back. The crowd murmured, thinking I'd been hurt, but the pain was memory that wasn't mine. Lucian's eyes sharpened as if he'd felt it too. The priest's voice dropped. "The cage confirms it, she affects the king." Selene snapped and slammed her hand against the glass beside my face. The runes stayed dull for her. Nothing answered. Panic flashed across her features, then she turned it into a bright smile for the court. "Fine," she announced. "Let the trial begin at dawn." Her gaze cut to me, quiet and venomous. "Pray he stays calm." Lucian stepped closer to the cage, so near his presence pressed through the glass. "Hear me," he said, quiet but absolute. "No one speaks to her without my leave." A ripple ran through the nobles. Selene froze, then laughed like it was a joke, though her eyes shook. "My king, you're emotional," she purred. Lucian didn't blink. "I'm dangerous," he corrected, and the chandeliers trembled. He lifted his hand toward the glass, stopping a hair's breadth away as if touch would break him. "If they cut you tomorrow," he murmured only for me, "I will not stop." My throat tightened. "Then don't let them," I whispered. The priest nodded to the guards. "Lock her in until dawn." Chains slid into place and the runes brightened. As Lucian turned away with forced calm, Selene leaned to the physician and whispered the word that chilled me. "Second dose." Inside the cage, I saw the physician's hand disappear into his sleeve. A thin vial flashed once in candlelight before vanishing. Selene didn't look at me again. She looked at Lucian, and she smiled like she'd already buried me. Dawn crept slow and cruel through high windows. The court returned in full armor and silk, hungry for spectacle. The glass cage hummed around me, runes pulsing with cold silver light. My mark burned steady now, not wild, waiting. Lucian stood on the throne steps, composed, lethal, distant, but I knew better. His jaw was locked too tight. His fingers curled once at his side when Selene brushed past him. The torches flickered toward me instead of him. That wasn't normal. The court noticed. The high priest raised his staff. "The blood trial begins." Selene stepped forward in white and gold, radiant and venomous. "If the mark is false," she declared sweetly, "she dies. If it destabilizes the throne, she dies. If she threatens the alliance." Lucian cut in, voice calm. "Finish carefully." Selene's smile sharpened. "She dies." The physician approached the cage. "A stabilizing draft," he announced, "to test reaction." My stomach dropped. The vial shimmered faintly blue, wrong in a way my bones recognized. Not poison, not exactly. Something designed to trigger. Lucian's eyes narrowed. What is it? Just a tonic, Your Grace. Seleni's voice drifted lightly across the hall. You trust your court, don't you? Lucian's power twitched. The chandeliers gave a soft metallic groan. The cage door opened just enough for the physician's hand to slip through. He grabbed my wrist, the marked one, and forced the vial against my lips. I tried to pull away, but the silver runes flared, pinning me in place. The liquid hit my tongue, cold, bitter, wrong. The mark ignited. Pain tore up my arm like lightning ripping through bone. I screamed, not from fear, but from the violent surge of something ancient waking up inside me. Lucian moved. Chains hidden beneath the throne platform shot up, locking around his wrists and ankles. The council had prepared. Contain him, Selene ordered. Lucian's eyes went black at the edges. The floor cracked under his boots. The entire hall trembled like it was deciding whether to survive. Lucian, I shouted, breath ragged. He froze. Not because of the chains. Because of me. The shadows that had begun to rise from beneath pillars halted mid-crawl. The air steadied. The chandeliers stopped shaking. The physician stumbled back from the cage, terrified. The tonic amplified the bond. Selene's face drained of color. That's not possible. Lucian's voice cut through the hall like a blade dragged slow across stone. You drugged her. Selene straightened. I tested her. You triggered her. The mark on my wrist pulsed brighter than before. It wasn't reacting to the drug anymore. It was reacting to him, his anger, his control, his restraint. I pressed my palm against the inside of the glass. The runes flared gold instead of silver. A crack spidered across the panel. Gasps filled the hall. Lucian pulled once against the chains. They snapped like old rope, not violently, not explosively, deliberately. Guards backed away. Even the high priest stepped down from the dais. Selene didn't retreat. She stepped closer, voice trembling with fury. You would throw away an alliance for her. Lucian descended the throne steps slowly. Every footstep echoed like a verdict. He didn't look at Selene. He didn't look at the court. He walked straight to the cage. He placed his palm flat against the cracked glass. My mark answered instantly. The cage shattered outward in a burst of harmless shards that dissolved before touching the floor. The runes died completely. Lucian's hand closed around my wrist, not rough, not gentle, certain. You see it, he said quietly to the court. You all saw it. Selene's voice broke. She's manipulating you. Lucian turned his head slowly toward her. The look in his eyes made several nobles drop to their knees without being told. She cannot manipulate what I willingly give. The line landed like thunder. Selene laughed once brittle. You're obsessed. Lucian didn't deny it. He stepped closer to me instead, placing himself half a step in front of my body, not hiding me, claiming position. She steadies the throne, he said. When she panics, I fracture. When she touches me, I control. The high priest whispered, awed and afraid. Then she is the key. Selene's composure finally cracked. Or she is the trigger, she screamed. Kill her before she owns you. Lucian's gaze sharpened. If she owns me, he said evenly, it is because I kneel. The court fell silent. Then Lucian did the unthinkable. He lowered himself onto one knee in front of me, not in weakness, not in surrender, in declaration. Shock rippled through the hall. Nobles bowed instinctively. Guards lowered weapons. Even the high priest bent his head. Selene stood frozen, face pale with disbelief. Lucian lifted his eyes to mine. No storm now, no hunger spilling, just raw, chosen intent. You are not my weakness, he said quietly. You are my decision. The words hit harder than any explosion. He rose and turned toward the court with controlled authority. "The alliance is dissolved," he announced. "The blood trial ends." Seleni's voice dropped to a whisper edged in poison. "This isn't over." Lucian looked at her once calm, devastating. "No," he agreed. "It is." Guards escorted Selene from the hall. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She walked like someone who had already begun planning her return. The court knelt fully now, not because of fear, but because they understood. The throne had reacted. The mark had answered. The king had chosen. Lucian turned back to me. For a moment, the hall felt empty despite the hundreds present. "You should be afraid of me," he said softly. "I was," I replied. "And now?" I met his eyes without flinching. "Now I know you're afraid of losing me." A flicker of something almost like a smile touched his mouth, dangerous, honest. "I don't fear many things," he murmured. "But you." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The mark pulsed once, steady and warm, not wild, not violent, chosen. Lucian took my hand and led me up the throne steps, not pulling, not forcing, inviting. The court bowed as we passed. At the top, he stopped beside the throne but didn't sit. He looked out at the hall, then at me, and spoke quiet enough for only the front rows to hear, yet loud enough for rumor to do the rest. "She was chosen by tradition," he said. "You were chosen by blood." The words spread like fire. And when he finally sat, he didn't pull me down beside him. He waited. I stepped forward on my own. The torches flared brighter, the throne room steadied. Power didn't explode, it aligned. Lucian leaned closer, voice barely audible. "You were marked in front of my bride," he said softly, "and I am still holding your hand." I squeezed his fingers once. Behind us, shattered glass was already being cleared. But near the exit, Selene paused only once before disappearing beyond the doors. Her final glance promised war. Lucian's grip tightened slightly, protective now, controlled. And the court understood something new that day. The Vampire King did not break when challenged. He chose. And what he chose, the throne obeyed. If you were Lucian, would you forgive Selene? Yes or no? Drop your answer below. And if this story kept you hooked from chaos to crown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the other dark fantasy stories waiting for you.